Welcome back to The Last Word with me, Justice Malala. On two separate occasions this week, EFF leader Julius Malema claimed that load shedding would be implemented at the last minute on Monday evening for the ANC to manipulate votes in their favor. The Electoral Commission of South Africa chairperson Glenn Mashinini said it will not be possible to rig the results of these elections. My guest tonight is Lulu White, a thought leader on elections and governance on the continent and a founder and chief executive of Elections Management and Consulting Agency of Africa. Lulu, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for making time for us. Can I start by asking you, there's been a surge in the number of candidates and parties from the last local elections that were held. What sort of challenge does this pose for the IEC logistically at first?
It poses a very long ballot paper. That is the biggest challenge that the IEC is going to be facing. The ballot papers are certainly going to be longer than we normally see them. I think if you've looked at the previous ballot papers, they have been fairly longer than A4. And obviously, the longer the ballot, because of the number of candidates that are there, the longer the counting period is going to be. Normally, the Electoral Commission Act provides that the IEC may release the result of the election within 7 days after the election has been completed. But in the past, the IEC has been able to do that within a period of 3 days. So one wonders whether, the record that they've kept through the years, they'll be able to maintain it, given the number of candidates that they will be that are participating in this particular election.
It also presents quite a lot of new voices in that ballot, in that voting station, where you have agents, where you have people, all of them looking to see if anything goes wrong and so forth.
Absolutely, it does. Look, the training of party agents and representative political parties has taken place. So one is of the view that people are fully aware of what their rights and responsibilities are. The presiding officer is the chief executive officer of that polling station, and if anything is to go wrong, if any of the party agents are to actually cause commotion, the presiding officer has every legal right to have them thrown out of the station. So I believe that because people know what their roles and what their rights are, nobody wants to mess up the election, and it will go well within the station, in my view.
Let's go back to what one would say the run-up to these elections. We saw, for example, the IEC applying for the Concord to postpone the vote by 6 months. It didn't get that. And then there was the issues around the registration of candidates, allegations by the DA in particular that the IEC had played sleight of hand with some of these things. Tell me what the impact of those allegations, if you will, have been on the IEC, will be on what we see over the next few days.
Look, the impact of any negative allegation generally, it places any organization in the front line of a scandal, in front of people also questioning their credibility. And I think in as much as the IEC has been an organization over the years that has withstood whatever level of criticism, this time around, they've got a lot more to prove than they've had in the past, precisely because of the issues that you've just raised. So the biggest thing, obviously, is their integrity. Now they're under a lot more scrutiny, except for the DA. You remember there's also the Action SA issue that they brought up with regard to their abbreviated name. So all of those things are things that actually people are saying to by themselves, that is the IEC really credible as an organization? But also we also need to take, I think a few weeks ago, the Afrobarometer released a report that showed that the confidence of consumers has dropped from 69% to 50-something, 58%. Yeah, so you realize that now the IEC is also a public institution, which then means that it is also affected by that Afrobarometer finding. Whether it is because of the corruption within the country, whether it's because of these issues that the IEC suddenly faces within this particular election, they are affected by that credibility as well, by that report as well. So already there's a complete mistrust of these government departments and public institutions within the country. And this is just another caveat that the IEC finds itself having to deal with.
For me, one of the things about that confidence, the lack of confidence in the system, was whether these actions, or rather, let me put it this way: do you think that the IEC, since then, since the allegations that have come through, has responded robustly enough to restore some of that confidence from consumers, citizens, as it were?
Interesting question, Justice, because I don't believe that the IEC has been fair in the level of response that they have been giving. One got the sense that perhaps the level of responsibility and the work that they had and the short timelines that they had, the level of communication was not as amped up as one would have expected it to have been. And you know, often we would need to look for articles to find out if there's anything else that the IEC has done. The IEC has had various media addresses that they've done to address some of these things. But, you know, I feel personally that perhaps they could have done a bit more. But then also there's also that sympathy that says, well, perhaps they were under a lot of pressure and there are many other things that needed to have been done. But communication-wise, I don't think that they've been out there.
One of the issues in that Afrobarometer survey was the lack of trust in the police as well. And I'd like to ask if it is within the ambit of your expertise. We've seen just this week the NFP in KwaZulu-Natal having one of its councillor candidates murdered. We've had here in Gauteng, in Tshwane, in Mabopane, a candidate murdered. We've seen quite a few of these in KwaZulu-Natal in particular. Will this have an impact at all on the elections, and what will be that? What would that be, and how concerned are you about that sort of thing?
Look, with regard to policing, I mean, the IEC currently has, in my view, I mean, systems in place to ensure that the elections are relatively safe, credible and safe. If you remember, when you look at a credible election, there are certain things you would look at, one of them being that is the environment conducive. And the South African police services and things like the military would be sources that are brought in to ensure that the environment is conducive for people to go and cast their votes. With regards to the crime, one can only help that with those victims that have been murdered as a result of these elections, that the police would take it upon themselves to actually investigate these political killings, because it does seem as though political killings have suddenly become something that becomes on the rise, particularly towards an election. Perhaps the police should also start having a voice more and start talking to when arrests are being made, so that people have a sense of comfort that actually when crime is committed, people who commit crime will not be able to get away with whatever it is that they've done. But as far as ensuring that the environment is conducive, free and fair, I'm of the view that the IEC would have taken the necessary precautionary measures, including ensuring that the police and metro officials are available to ensure that people are able to vote freely and comfortably.
We have 1 minute left. If I could ask you, all of us want a free and fair election. We want at the end of this process to say, yes, we did it again and it was free and fair. What are the key things you will be looking out for that will make you say it is a free and fair election in 5-6 days after this?
Well, for me, the media coverage, I'm of the view that political parties, whether it was minority parties or majority parties, political party had free media, had adequate or at least adequate access to media, and that is one of the elements that you would look for in a credible election. The no-go zones. Often you'd find that the areas that political parties or independent candidates are not able to go to because of no-go zones. In this particular area, we only endorse this particular person. So having a report that would show that there were no areas that were regarded no-go zones and people were able to campaign freely. The issue of of security as well, where people did not have to be intimidated or there were no reports on intimidation, that would be a free and a credible election. Where there was no direct hindrance of people having access to a voting station, that would also, so that there's a tick box that I have already of the things, and also observers, whether there were enough observers throughout the stations, whether party agents had enough and adequate access to the resources within the station to ensure that they participate fully or they observe freely without being intimidated within the voting stations. And those are some of the general things. Stationery as well. Was there enough stationery? Ballot boxes, ballot papers, were they adequately supplied? Was it within the correct voting districts and voting stations? Things like that, just to make sure that all the checks and all the ticks and balances are in place.
Sure. Super. Lulu White, thanks so much. We'll be nodding at your list as we go through this election, and we all hope that it will be free and fair. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Join us after the break for our comment of the day.